Hi all, it's week 3 here. So this week we have the organization speech outline, organization speech video submission, quiz 3, your self-evaluation, and I have a link on here for informative speech topics as well to get you thinking about that. I know this class moves really quickly, but that's how it would go if we were actually able to meet also. So I'm gonna just go ahead and go over chapters 8 through 12, which will be on your quiz. So chapter 8, organizing the body of the speech. So they talk about the main points, they talk about supporting materials, they talk about connectives like transitions, internal previews, internal summaries, signposting, all those things which I pretty much have gone over in the last video. Chapter 9, they talk about beginning and ending the speech, and you can see they include those together because they're so similar, right? As you noticed last video. So I'm not even gonna go over that one because I already did. And the longer I make these videos, the longer they take to upload. Okay, so chapter 10, they talk about outlining the speech. I want you to basically, look over this chapter, but you can pretty much just ignore it because I have my own way of outlining, which I've already explained to you, and the outline writing guide is available for you. And the reason I do it this way is because I feel like my way makes more sense. Take it or leave it. You can review it if you'd like, but I want the outline a very specific way. So follow that. And with that being said, that chapter, there shouldn't be any questions that are specific from that chapter. It'll more be related to what I've already gone over when it comes to outlining. Chapter 11, they talk about using language. They specifically talk about meanings of words, using language accurately, using familiar words, not using words that are so obscure, maybe it's difficult for some of your audience to understand. Use vivid language like imagery. They talk about having some rhythm. I'm going to see if I can upload one of those or link one of those videos that I talked about how some of my students who were on the competitive teams did like oral interpretation and poetry and things like this. Obviously very different than your informative or persuasive speeches, but I think just kind of cool to see and get to watch and get that feeling of what they're trying to like invoke in their listener. So using language appropriately for the occasion, the audience, the topic, for yourself as a speaker. And then they talk about, which I think is really interesting, about inclusive language on page 236. So chapter 12, we've got delivery. They talk about what is good delivery, methods of delivery, how to use note cards, reading from a script, pauses, vocal variety, pronunciation, articulation, dialect, your personal appearance, body language, and things like that. They also talk about eye contact, gestures, and all things that are very important when it comes to public speaking. I will say it's going to be very different with doing our class this way, right? Because yes, you can give the phone or computer, whatever you're using to record your speech, that eye contact, and you can use gestures and some movement to a certain extent. But a lot of these things are kind of difficult to teach without doing activities and things that we would normally do in class, and without having a way to do those activities virtually at this point. So just some things to keep in mind when you're thinking about this chapter is that I'm not looking for perfection. I'm not looking for you to have your speech memorized. I would love it if you could speak extemporaneously. And for example, what I'm doing in these videos is speaking extemporaneously, right? You can see that I'm looking off to my desk space here. I'm checking out the textbook. I'm checking out my notes to make sure I say what I'm going to say, make sure I hit all my points. But I'm speaking extemporaneously, right? I haven't really practiced what I'm going to say. I've said these things so many times in teaching. So with that being said, something that I always like to share is that when you're practicing your speeches, practice. The saying, practice makes perfect, is not true or not what I want you to be accomplishing. But the more you practice, the more comfortable you're going to be with what you plan to say, which will help you speak more extemporaneously, will help you sound more natural and informed and like you know what you're talking about. So I encourage you, prior to recording your speech, maybe you practice it at least 2 to 10 times. You can practice in the mirror. You could practice recording. That way, if you do it really well one time and you're like, I should have recorded that one, maybe you already have it recorded, then you can submit that one. I also encourage you to, if you do have family, friends around that you can practice in front of, it's great to get their opinion on certain things. They might ask for clarification in areas that you didn't think were unclear. They can also look at your the rubric that's in the files and make sure you're hitting everything that the rubric says, right? So another thing that I want to point out is that normally in class, and you'll see it probably listed in the syllabus, I think I kept it there, that I encourage people to dress nicely for their speeches. I would encourage this same thing when you're recording them. As tempting as it might be to record them in your pajamas since you don't have to go anywhere, dress professionally. It gives you that, look good, feel good type of thing. It helps your confidence. It helps you present well. So I encourage you to do that. Okay. With that being said, I think since this is a shorter video at this point, why not make it a long video? Let's go over the rubric pack, which is in files. Again, you have access to this. This is what I use to grade speeches. So you'll notice that the first one is person of interest. What does that mean? That used to be a boring speech that we would do in class, and I changed it to the organization speech. So I use the same rubric for that. I'm going to go over the informative one because they all they grow on each other. So the informative one is a good place to start for right now. And like I said, you have access to these. So the longer I make these videos, the longer they take for me to upload. So it has different sections. So we've got organization, content, and delivery for the informative. So organization is broken down into intro, thesis, audience connection, preview, main points, body transitions, conclusion, and conclusion impact. Our content is broken down into topic choice, supporting materials, source quantity. So you'll notice in the advanced section, to get like full points, you need to have 5 or more sources. That's what I was saying, right? About a source per minute. So if your speech is between 5 and 6 minutes, you need to have at least 5 sources. Orally cited, they're not just included on that reference page. That's not what I'm grading off of. You need to actually say them. Source quality, so they're all diverse and academic. And source utilization, so how you're explaining them. Do they make sense? All the things that we've gone over. And then delivery, this is where I'll be really lenient with these videos. I will be expecting you to give proper eye contact, have some movement and gestures, use vocal variety, which is volume, rate, your pace, your tone, not being completely monotone. And that's something that you can definitely practice. And since you're recording it, you should probably watch it before you upload it and maybe even send it to a friend or family member and see what they think. Language and appearance are also on here as well. And normally for appearance, I usually tell people, like what I just said, it look good, feel good. I'm not judging you on like, I didn't like your shirt. I just want you to look professional. In class, I typically say, pretend you're going to a job interview. I like to, for me, when I was practicing public speaking and doing presentations so often, it really, what I felt like it was preparing me for was job interviews that I would eventually do that were difficult in some ways, but they would prepare me for that. My dog is running quickly past. Okay, so I went over the rubric. I think I will save, well, let me check here what I want to save for the next time. Okay, I will go over it actually. We will go over the student sample informative speech. And remember, your informative speech is going to be a podcast, so we won't be physically seeing you, we'll be hearing you. So there should be a lot of that vocal variety and rate and tone. And like I said, you're more than welcome to include creative things like sound bites for your sources maybe, or music at the intro and at the end, or come up with a fun podcast name or whatever you want to do. So you can see in this outline here, they have the title at the top, Informative Speech, Political Socialization. The purpose, to inform my classmates about the way in which different educational levels, gender, and family demographics tend to vote. So they have the introduction, where it's broken down, AG, and then they list their attention getter, perfect. Thesis, their specific purpose. So they say, today I'll present information on political socialization in America. Political socialization is the way in which a person develops or acquires their political beliefs and attitudes. Establish credibility. They say, as a United States citizen and through research and voting tendencies, I can tell you about the way in which specific groups of people vote on the liberal versus conservative scale. Preview points. Throughout this time, I would probably say throughout this speech, I will discuss the effect of location, education, gender, and family on the way an American votes. I will start off, this is our transition, I will start off by presenting the facts about education and with what side people with varying levels of education I typically identify. So let's just say I was going to read this full body point here, pretending that I'm, podcasting. So, education plays a large role in the way in which people vote. In a 2012 article titled Economic Demographics of Democrats, last accessed on October 2nd, Billy Fay discussed that Republicans have the most support from high school graduates, people with some college experience, and college graduates, but is declining in college graduates. People with higher education levels vote more conservative as a whole. However, after some further research, I found evidence as to why the Republican support started to decrease among the people with a college degree. From the Social Studies Help Center website, the outline on public opinion and ideology, last accessed on October 2nd, suggested that college education has liberalizing effects that may stem from the liberalization of professors and the exposure to politics. This shows a correlation between the decline in Republican support from college graduates and the education type. Based on this information, it is obvious that education impacts political socialization. Another factor that is often a key in the development of political ideology is gender. That was the transition. So in the next body point, they're going to talk about gender. That was a great transition. To me personally, this is why I uploaded this one. This is not a perfect example, right? To me, there's some persuasiveness to this. There is some personal beliefs in here. But they do back it up with source citation, and it is a great example of what I think the outline should look like. So that is why I have it on here. And hopefully you can see here in the video my vocal variety and the way that I'm speaking professionally. It's different than the way that I'm speaking now. That does take some practicing and polishing. Maybe I can try to link the speech and debate resources so that you can kind of hear this, as I would call it, speech talk. And it's this different voice. But like I said, if you haven't listened to any podcasts, I can link some that I really like. I'm into like murder mystery stuff. I guess it's not really murder mystery, but true crime podcasts. So I can post some of the ones that I like, and I like how they deliver them. It's definitely different. It's less formal, but because you're presenting a very like well-written speech, it's going to be different than a normal podcasting way. So I will post those other links, and you can review them. And next video, we will go over quiz 4 and some persuasive speaking.